Hello, book club. Happy Monday. I hope you enjoyed my interview last week with Niamh Schmid and Rebecca Schmid, authors of The Exiled, of Shade and Shadow, Book 1 of A Daughter's Ransom. This week's video is a very special excerpt reading video. The first excerpt that you're going to hear is one that maybe new members haven't seen yet. It's from a few months back. They sent us a clip of them reading a little bit from the very beginning of their book. And then stick around because we have a brand new excerpt reading that they recorded from a part later on in the book, and they read their parts showing what they wrote along the way in that excerpt. Please remember to like and subscribe while you're here. It lets me know you like these kinds of videos, and it'll help you keep up to date every time one of our videos posts.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Schmid.
And my name is Niamh Schmid.
And we're the author duo known as Shara Reeves Press.
So we were asked to do just a quick introductory video. I'm going to talk very briefly about our book series. As a whole, it's an 8-book series that's going to cross over the 3 genres of fantasy, steampunk, and sci-fi. So it covers 3 worlds, each in their respective genre, and through the course of the series, they slowly begin to intertwine and collide.
So our first book, which is what you'll see in your poll, is of Shade and Shadow. This takes place in the medieval fantasy setting. It follows 2 characters, Astra and Lugo, in the immediate aftermath of this big war, this big coup that they were both part of. The book starts with Astra getting exiled from the very country she just helped save. I'm going to read you just the first paragraph so that you can get a little taste of it. This is chapter 1. 284 days since the war had ended, and Astra wished to find herself anywhere other than sitting outside the proceedings hall. She was too sad to cry, too scared to run, and too loved to be able to tell anyone. None of it made sense. Astra had exhausted herself trying to figure it out in words. Now, she didn't even bother to try.
So we're just going to be reading from a snippet, a little ways into of Shade and Shadow. We're going to read it in the way that we would have written it. So when you hear me speaking, it's what I wrote. Theoretically, we don't always remember anymore. And then when you hear Niamh speaking, it's something that Niamh wrote. So this starts with Niamh.
Yes. All right. So it's a scene, if anyone's curious, it's page 109, and they're in the library. So, you find anything? Luco's voice came from behind her.
Apparently, he'd followed her. Not as much as I hoped, she admitted, wondering at his sudden interest. But there are plenty more places to look in here, I suppose. Too many places, perhaps.
So serious, he murmured. Would you like some assistance? I'm a little more acquainted with the interior of the library and would be more than happy to help, he added in that assumed annoying voice.
The offer caught Astra by surprise. Suspicion crept in, and she tried not to think of Omath's warning. She reminded herself instead of her decision to trust Lugo.
Don't have any subjects in the territory, but I can give it a go.
Oh my God, I love that so much. It's kind of funny because when I've started reading your book already, just from being able to have known you in advance, and I know not all the members, have that opportunity, I was trying so hard to try and figure out who wrote what line. And it's so interesting to see just how closely it is that it's switched off, to see that conversation that you have with each other when you're writing. I love it so much.
We've gotten to the stage where sometimes one of us will predict what the other is going to write.
That's been really weird. There's also, I don't know if you've ever been in writing club actually when this has happened, but we have the tendency when we're even just discussing, writing, we'll say entire sentences at the same time, out loud, in unison.
Very embarrassing.
There's always like this awkward silence after of everybody just processing. And I was like, I think this has gotten to a really extreme level.
You guys are like just one writing mind.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty cool, because I was wondering too, like when you read in the writers group, you have such separate writing styles, but then to read it in your book combined, it's so interesting how well they flow together, and you really kind of can't tell who said what.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, we chose this particular passage because we could sort of remember who wrote what. A lot of times we look back and we're like, I don't even know who said that one.
That's true, because if you're going back and forth in Google Docs, it's not like it labels like this came,
No, yeah.
from this computer or anything. So that's kind of fun too, to be able to look back and be like, who did write this? It's great either way. Like, just send it.
Exactly. And sometimes what'll happen, so like for instance in that passage when Astra's like, oh, apparently Luco followed her. What might have originally happened is I wrote Luco followed her, and then Becca went back and kind of rewrote it to match Astra's tone, and because Astra might not have been expecting him to follow her or things like that. So like sometimes we'll just write what the character did, and then whoever's in charge of the voice, the narration voice, so it was Astra's view, so Becca had the overall control of the scene, would go back and tweak it just so it matches Astra's voice and what's going on in the context.
Oh, that is so cool. I am fascinated. I feel like I would be fascinated just being able to sit there and watch you two work like all day. Just to see
There's a
how
lot of
fast and
deleting. It's also really funny because our writing processes are very different. I am a very fast writer, so I can pull about I don't know, like 1,500 words in 30-40 minutes. And Becca's slower. So, but Becca usually, when she does write, it's slower but a more polished finish. And usually when I write, I just can write all of it out, but then I'm going to have to go back in the second draft and really polish it up. So what will happen if we have longer sections is when it's Becca's turn, she'll go and write. And so I'll go on to another document and start writing another project or rewriting book 4 or whatever. And then she'll just text me and be like, come back, please. I'll come back and do my turn.
It's so funny because she'll be writing and I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna go grab something really quick, and I come back, she's like, where did you go? You've been gone so long. I've been gone for minutes. And like, oh, and she comes back to the document and I'm like, I'm writing, I kind of delete and I write something and I delete the whole paragraph, and then like, yeah, that's very different.
That's interesting. It's like you have, it's like Niamh, you have like the NaNoWriMo kind of style the whole way through, like get it out, go back, check it later. And then, so do you find, Rebecca, that you don't edit as much after? Like, do you feel pretty good about it editing as you go?
For me, it helps me get like more of a complete look at the whole book, if that makes sense. Like by having that slower process, I feel like it's a little more condensed. So yes, I find I don't need to do nearly as many drafts for my editing. The one I'm working on now, I've been looking back, it's pretty clean. I haven't really had to do very much, which has been great now that I'm in a little bit of a time pinch.
And it makes me feel a little bit like, too, do you write your books completely like in order? Because it seems to me like you sound very organized, like you kind of feel like you have to picture it all in order, or am I getting that image wrong? Like, do you jump around and say, oh, well, I know this is going to happen later, I'll write that and then come back? Or do you guys do that at all?
I think we very often write in order. Like I'd say 80 to 90% of the time we write in order. I can think of a very few handful of scenes that we have written out of order. There was a scene that I wrote that I knew I wanted to happen, and it was like a therapy scene. I needed to write it because it's like my favorite. And I remember not being sure whether it was going to be in book 4 or book 6 because I wasn't sure about timing and lead up, but I wanted to write it. It was like I had to write it. And I know Becca has written a few scenes out of order in her prequel that she's currently writing. But I'd say a good 80 to 90% of the time we write in order.
We're not as good about writing our books in order.
That's true.
We do like Tyron's prequel. There's 2 of them actually. The second one happened first, and then somebody told me I need to go back and write the first one. I'm like, what do you mean first one? This is the one. Like, so it's turned into 2 series from there, and it's kind of ended up backwards. And this has happened a few different times with us, but.
Oh, this is so cool. I'm going to find myself after hearing your excerpt as I read the whole time. Like, I feel like I want to just kind of mark things like, did I guess right? Did you write this? Did you write this? Like,
if you get it wrong, like,
there's
don't
a couple
feel bad.
Like really big like quotes that are like our favorite quotes of the series, and we can't remember who wrote them. And it's like our favorite quotes. Like, and we can't remember.
we have this fun thing, like with people that know us particularly, we'll ask afterwards, like, okay, who wrote who? Who do you think like had which main character? And our own mothers have guessed incorrectly. So
Oh gosh.
Well, because Luco is pretty snarky and Astra's pretty quiet and nice and not as she's snarky too, but not as like the sarcastic remarks. And Astra, I called you Astra, Becca.
that's a
Becca,
well, not that's not a first, but that's
Becca is a lot more witty than I am in real life. So everyone's like, "Oh, Luco's the witty smart one. It must be that Becca wrote him."
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. So not only have you merged as like one writing mind, now you're like kind of like switching characters, and you guys have like the coolest backstory of, like behind your story. I find it so interesting, all of it. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for this excerpt. This is so amazing. I can't wait to keep reading more and talk with you again at the end of the month with a gazillion more questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.